The UN scam. World government behind the facade of international cooperation. Historian Ioan Ratiu, in his book The Milner-Fabian Conspiracy, has exposed what may have been the largest political scam in human history. When we hear the words United Nations, our imagination conjures up familiar symbols, a blue flag, solemn speeches about peace, human rights, and international harmony. We are told that this is the pinnacle of human political wisdom, a platform where countries learn to negotiate and prevent wars. I propose to discard this stereotypical image and ask the question, what does this organization actually represent in terms of its origins, structure, and results of activities? A careful analysis of the history of the UN, its ideological foundations, and its practices leads to the conclusion that we are dealing not with a union of nations, but with an instrument of centralized global governance. This is why I call the UN a scam in the political sense of the word. Why the UN is a scam. According to the dictionary, the word scam means a form of fraud in which something is presented as something it is not. The essence of a scam is to mislead people in order to deprive them of money, freedom, sovereignty, identity, and the right to an independent future. The United Nations did not emerge spontaneously as a response to human suffering. It grew out of the League of Nations, a structure initially focused on global governance through supranational mechanisms. The same political and elite circles, the same ideological principles, and the same methods formed the basis for the creation of the UN. Only its scale has changed. It's important to understand the key point. A system created by elite groups that control finance, politics, and ideology cannot serve humanity. It inevitably serves the interests of those who create it and control it. Look at the structure of the UN. Formally, all countries are equal. But in reality, decisions are made by a small group of permanent members of the Security Council, and these are precisely the states that sell the most weapons, participate in the most conflicts, and dictate the terms of global politics. And then we are asked to believe that this structure exists for the sake of world peace. What are the ideological roots of the UN? The UN is not a politically neutral organization. Its ideological origins go back to the Socialist International, formed in London in the second half of the 20th century under the auspices of the British ruling class. It was in this environment that the idea emerged that nation-states were a relic of the past and that humanity needed a single supranational governance. This idea was later taken up by British Fabian socialists, then by left-wing liberals and their political allies. They did not openly reject the state. Their strategy was more subtle and effective, the gradual erosion of sovereignty through a network of international organizations, commissions, courts, foundations, and supranational institutions. The UN has become the ideal instrument for implementing this approach. It has allowed decisions to be made bypassing national parliaments, norms to be imposed on states under the guise of international consensus, and the will of the people to be ignored under the guise of humanism and human rights. It's no coincidence that from the very beginning, key positions within the UN structure were occupied by socialists, communists, and their ideological allies. This wasn't a coincidence or a personnel error, but a conscious and deliberate choice. The UN is an alliance of socialism and international capital. Many may be surprised by the close collaboration between socialists and international capital in the creation and management of the UN. Shouldn't they be implacable enemies, as we've been led to believe for years? In essence, they are united by a common enemy, the sovereign nation-state and free capitalist competition. Socialists are dissatisfied with the existence of sovereign states. Financial monopolies are dissatisfied with the existence of national economies and independent markets. Both benefit from a unified system of rules, a unified authority, and a single decision-making center. Thus, an alliance emerged that only at first glance seems paradoxical. Socialists provide the ideology, financial elites provide resources and capital, and international organizations provide the institutional framework. The UN was created as a world government. If you look at the UN without rose-colored glasses, it becomes clear that this organization is structured like a state. Legislative power is represented by the General Assembly. Executive power is concentrated in the Secretariat. The power of law is exercised through the Security Council. The judicial system operates in the form of the International Court of Justice, and economic ministries are embodied in the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Trade Organization. We are faced with a system of supranational governance that is constantly expanding its powers while simultaneously narrowing the sovereignty of nation-states. UN financial institutions play a special role in this system, acting as the primary lever of pressure. States are not given direct orders, they are offered loans, which lead to the loss of economic independence, the privatization of strategically important sectors of the economy, and subordination to external directives. If current trends continue, the UN will inevitably transform into a global center of power, and nation-state governments will become meek enforcers of its decisions. We have already witnessed this horrific situation during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now let's move on to one of the most sensitive issues, the UN's racial policy. From its very inception, the UN demonstrated an obsession with race. Early on, the organization's leadership proposed eliminating the word race and replacing it with the term ethnic group. Later, the UN even attempted to ban the term ethnic group as incompatible with the New World Order it was building. Under the pretext of fighting racism, the UN effectively denies the existence of different human races and consequently their right to life. This is especially true for the white race, as the fight against racism is waged exclusively in countries with indigenous white populations. It's no surprise that any attempts by white communities to defend their right to exist in the face of forced mass immigration from non-white regions are branded racist and xenophobic. The shocking truth behind the UN's anti-racist policies is that white Africa is now on the brink of extinction. This includes South Africa, which traditionally had the largest white population among African countries. The same trend is observed on other continents, including Europe, where the natural increase of the indigenous population remains extremely low and is largely compensated for by immigration from non-white regions, primarily from Africa and Asia. At the beginning of the 20th century, members of the European race made up 25% of the world's population. Today, their share has dropped to 11%. If current trends continue, the European population is expected to decline to 7% by the mid-21st century. These facts expose the UN's anti-racist policy as anti-white. Human rights organizations characterizing the essence of the UN's racial policy rightly state that the UN's idea of combating racism and xenophobia is to encourage more of it. Another UN obsession is the topic of cultural diversity, which objectively exists in the world and requires no regulation. However, the UN insists on the need to artificially expand cultural diversity within societies that are predominantly white. The ideology of cultural diversity is essentially identical to multiculturalism, and the UN is its main driving force. The UN's multicultural agenda was reaffirmed in a statement by the UN Secretary-General's Special Representative for Migration, Peter Sutherland, who noted that the world towards which we are increasingly moving is multicultural. The truth is, we're not moving toward a multicultural world of our own free will. We're being pushed there by international moneymakers and their propagandists, like Sutherland. The UN is also a major driving force behind targeted immigration processes. The UN presents mass immigration as an economic or humanitarian necessity. But in practice, it becomes a tool for pressuring states. When millions of people move across borders, national identity is eroded, social conflicts intensify, crime rises, and states lose control over their own demographics. Calls by UN representatives for European states to be more open to immigration from Asia and Africa indicate the intention of international capital to use immigration as a tool for the targeted destruction of European society, even to the point of dismantling it and replacing it with a non-European population. Following UN guidance, the European Union's leadership has set migrant intake quotas for each state, and the World Bank made the admission of migrants a condition for providing loans. And finally, we come to the most pressing problem of our time: the UN policy of Islamization of European civilization. The UN's pro-Islamic policy is closely linked to three key elements of its system: the socialist drive to create a world government, the socialist drive to dismantle European civilization, and the oil interests of the UN's financial sponsors. Socialists view traditional European culture, based on Christian values, as undesirable. Seeking to transform the European cultural matrix to suit their progressive fantasies, socialists have entered into alliances with non-European cultures. Thus, in July 2008, UN agencies, in cooperation with the League of Arab States, the Organization of the Islamic Conference, and heads of state of European and Arab countries, launched the Barcelona process of the Union for the Mediterranean. The stated goal of this initiative was to integrate the Islamic countries of North Africa, the Middle East, and Turkey into the European Union. In November 2001, the UNESCO General Conference adopted the Universal Declaration on Cultural Diversity. In this document, member states reaffirmed their conviction that intercultural dialogue is the best guarantee of peace. When the UN speaks of intercultural dialogue, it invariably means dialogue with Islam. And dialogue with Islam means the promotion of Islamic culture and religion, and their adoption in the West. There are many cultures on planet Earth, but only one has proven capable of sustained scientific and technological progress, giving birth to civilization. This civilization is called European because its formation and development were linked to the activities of representatives of the European race. Thus, the Islamization of Europe means the end of civilization and a complete halt to scientific and technological progress. This is precisely the state of affairs that elite circles behind the scenes at the UN slyly call sustainable development. Conclusion. The UN's scam lies in the fact that, under the slogans of peace and cooperation, a system of global governance was created designed to deprive peoples of the right to independently determine their own future. Recognizing this fact is an important step toward an adequate perception of the world around us and inevitably raises the question, do the peoples of the world need an organization like the UN? A link to the text of the chapter, The UN Scam, from Ioan Ratiu's book is provided below this video. Thank you for your attention.